and it's a nice time to set some goals for a new year. We've had really difficult times. We've all seen difficult times with COVID. Many friends and family are not here anymore with us. And so all of us have faced some mental health issues, right? So we have a mental health expert today with us, Janine Rose. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to kind of introduce yourself and tell us about, what you think the mental health situation of people right now looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is pretty exciting to get to speak about mental health. I know it's kind of a controversial topic that make people uncomfortable. So it's nice to have these conversations and have it in a light and kind of an enjoying manner. As you said, my name is Janine. I've got a podcast on Black mental health in Canada, where my goal is really just to normalize the conversation around mental health. And I've got a degree in psychology. I'm going to be pursuing my master's. I'm a facilitator with the Working Mind for the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And I'm also certified in seasonal affective disorder, mental health in children, just courses that are kind of put out through the different organizations. So, your question with regards to COVID and how it affected our mental health and where we're at now, it's really interesting because with mental health, I kind of think we think of mental health as this like extreme situation where there's mental illness.
Hmm.
And one thing we teach with the working mind is a continuum, right? You go from green to yellow to orange to red. And when you're in the green, you're in a healthy state. It doesn't mean that you haven't dealt with mental illness before. It just
Mhm.
means that this is the coping skills that you've adopted to be able to function as a healthy person. And so I think all these things were going on before COVID. And then when COVID happened, it just put the squeeze on. So all of these things that maybe people were operating in the yellow or the orange, or what I like to call like the mango zone, where you're just a little irritated, you're not quite, your best self, you're just a little
Mhm.
on edge. It put the squeeze on. And you went from a mango to maybe like a deep orange or a dark orange, even borderline to red, and you weren't able to reach out to your regular resources. You weren't able to go, for runs. You weren't able to be active. You weren't able to, get the support that you needed. So now that we're out of COVID, it's really awesome to be able to have these conversations, and it's really blown the lid off the mental health piece and how important it is to take care of your mental health. So I think right now we're kind of in this transition stage where it's like all of this mess and chaos was happening in the throes of COVID. Now, how do we come out of that? We can't ignore it. I hear this comment very often that like we want to go back. And I was like, I don't think we can go back because there was so much that was exposed throughout COVID that we can't go back, right? You can't unsee, you can't unfeel whatever you experienced. So we have to navigate through it. So I think it's going to be important that we add those additional resources in, reaching out to a therapist. I'm a huge advocate for having a therapist, having a psychologist, being in touch with your medical doctor, and really understanding the changes in your behavior as time goes on. And we're not talking about like if you're driving down the road, I mean, you might get upset at a driver on the road, but that's a one off. If you notice that you're staying in that space, then it's like, okay, I'm going to do a self check. What is happening in my body that's allowing me or that's forcing me to stay in this space and I'm not able to let go? This is something I need to pay attention to, and maybe I need to talk to somebody. So, I hope that answered your question. Might have been more information than you were
Thank you
expecting.
so much for that. It surely did give a synopsis of what we are looking at. We will continue to look at minute details later on, but let me go to Lola. Hi Lola, welcome to our show.
Hi,
I
how are you?
I have interviewed you before. I'm quite sure I have met you and I've interviewed you as well.
That's right. That's correct.
Perfect. Yes. So I know that you're a nurse, but I think we need to give a little more detailed, backgrounder. So if you can just share what your experience has been as a nurse and what are the other things you do, just for our show today.
All right. Hey, hi everyone. Hi. I think what you just spoke about mental health is more than it's just so explicit. My name is Lola Olorunfemi, and I've been on the platform before. I'm a nurse by profession. I teach. I used to teach at McEwen and U of A. I teach nursing student. I'm a nurse educator. I have a clinic, an aesthetics clinic. So things that, it's part of mental health. What do you see? What you like in the when you stand in front of the mirror? So I do beauty. I do. They do healing, massage therapy. So I have a clinic where we do all of that, where you
Wow.
take care of yourself, self care from inside out. Also, I'm a legal nurse consultant where we handle, your medical legal records. So even when you get sick, are you sure that you're being treated and given the standard of care of what you need to do? And I do a couple of things, in this community as well. So I'm a mental health nurse also, and I teach acute care. So I really resonate with what you were saying. So in a nutshell, that's who I am. And of course, I have kids. I'm a mother and I'm a wife, and of course, I'm a woman. So mental health in women is such a big thing, and what we have to deal with as we juggle so many things. People don't understand. I can't fathom what we have to do as mothers, as wives, as employees or employer. So, some of us that employ people too. Then, whatever religion to take care of your core inside out. A lot of people don't really resonate and they don't know, and not even a lot of people, but what we do to keep ourselves centered so we are able to pour into our families, our children, our husbands, our mothers and fathers. All of us have family. We have responsibility. So as you're pouring, are we filling ourselves up? So in a nutshell, that's what I do. And also then when we get to the aspect of physical checkup. When was the last time you checked your blood pressure? When was the last time you checked what you're putting in and what's coming out, because sometimes when you don't check your diet, and it's not just the food diet, mental diet, emotional diet, it affects how you treat people and how you treat yourself. So sometimes it's good to see things in that perspective that looks like a 3D. I say it's a 3D. Do you see it in a different perspective? So even though you think we are pretty, we are okay, and so people don't even like what they see. How do you see yourself on the inside? What do you watch? What do you listen to? What do you tell yourself? And also what keep you focused? What keep you centered as a person so you are able to contribute to wherever environment you are in positively? So I think I'll stop right there.
Thanks, Lola. It
You're
was
welcome.
really nice to hear some of your background. I already know some of it, but thanks so much for sharing with our audience today.
You're welcome.
So what I'm going to focus on is, right now, because we have a mental health person and we have someone who's working in the field.
Mary, I think you froze there.
It's like,
Oh, I think probably a Wi-Fi drop or something.
yeah, hopefully she'll come back.
Hopefully she will. She probably will.
Okay.
Oh,
In the meantime, I love that you spoke about what we put in our bodies. I was reading a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how not only as you said, like the physical food that we put in our body, but also the mental stresses, right? And how you can have all this stress and anxiety and mental health challenges at the beginning of let's say in your in your teenage years or even in your 20s, and then you don't actually see it manifest until like later on in your 40s. You've got like your hair's falling out, or all these things start coming through, and you're like, where is this from? You're like, yeah, because the body kept score. So
that's true.
I'm so glad both of you stepped in because my internet was giving me trouble. Um, so let's actually focus on this new year and what are the kind of goals that as women, as mothers, as working women, what are the kind of things that you think we have to think about at the beginning of the year or maybe set some goals about. So first, I will go to Janine.
sure. That's a great question because as Lola says, There's so much that's already on our plate. I've also got kids. My kids are 8 and 10. So there's so much that's constantly going on, with regards to
Yeah.
like navigating your own schedules, navigating their schedules, keeping them engaged, and doing what I like to call intentional parenting, right? Like I think we're out of the season where we just have kids and we let them kind of raise themselves. We intentionally parent our children. We give them space for their emotions. We help them grow through things, right? So for me, at the beginning of the year, I kind of sit down and kind of do an assessment of what I've done throughout the year, how much I've grown, and the things I want to accomplish. And I also decide on a word for every year. This year, funny enough, my word choice was abundance. And the reason why I chose that was because, a couple years ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly. So I went through like a serious season of depression. I kind of imploded. I was on long-term disability for a while. So everything kind of came, other than the bare minimum with regards to survival, came to a screeching halt. So I was like, okay, now I'm ready to move this forward. So I want abundance. I want an abundance of blessings. I want an abundance of, growth. I want an abundance of connections and just kind of building that back. Um, so that was kind of what I set a goal for this year. And I don't like the word resolution because it gives me the impression that what I was doing before wasn't okay. And I don't like to feel like that. So it's like stuff that I want to improve on. Definitely health is a big one. I think as Black people, we don't take it as seriously as maybe we should. We definitely do love, the fried chicken. We definitely do love everything, even like curry chicken and stuff that's soaked in butter and simmered in in oil. Good stuff, tasting stuff, but not quite good for our physical health. So I want to focus on things that are close to their natural state as possible. For instance, I just made brownies, but I made it using like almond flour and dates as sweetener, and dark chocolate, like 90% dark chocolate. So just kind of paying attention to the stuff that I'm physically putting in and obviously the stuff that I'm reading, right? I'm a big fan of reading audiobooks and physical books. I was just telling Lola that one of the books that I was reading was The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how you the body remembers everything that you put it through, not just physically, but also mentally. All the stresses and anxieties that you hold on to and you don't resolve, it will come back. And, there's physical things that happen or physiological things that happen in your body, physiological changes that happen in your body. So yeah, that's kind of my goals for the year.
Wow. Thanks so much for that. Um, for me, like, this year has been something that unprecedented. Actually, my husband's health has been deteriorating. He's diabetic for so many years, and so now his kidneys have started to not do so well. And so we had a very difficult new year because that was the day when we got the results saying that his kidneys are at 20%. I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do next? So it was a very, very scary new year for me. Thankfully, we've been able to do make some dietary changes, and he's doing some kind of naturopathy kind of thing, and slowly his kidneys are doing better. So for me, that was a huge wake up call, and it's said to me that come on, girl, you need to do something so that you don't get into the same situation, right?
Yeah.
So I joined the Y, which is just opposite my house, and I've started, giving 1 hour to just getting my stamina up so that during work I don't feel tired. And I really
Mhm.
feel that, in the morning, once you just go and you take some time for yourself, you do some exercise, you do some walking, and you really feel energetic throughout the day. And,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you don't feel like, oh, I'm drained. You don't feel that because your body is revved up for the whole day. So that was what I've started doing. And I'm really happy that it's helping me. So I'm going to move to Lola. You have worked with all kinds of age groups, I'm sure, right? And I think your special focus must be women, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, for me this year, I think I'm focused more on
Okay.
healing in total. And I'll tell you why my focus is healing, because I noticed that at the peak of COVID, my husband is a physician, so he goes to work, and anxiety. Everybody's scared. It's a psychiatrist. Everybody's suicidal. Nobody had a clue. Nobody had answers.
Mhm.
I was teaching then, and we go to the hospitals, and you know what people are dying. We had no clue. Sometimes after we done the hospital, then we have to bring this anxiety home where we just don't have answers. We cry with families. You have people that are dying, with their family can come and see them. And everybody was clueless. So I knew there was a baggage somewhere in the hair, whether as a caregiver or even as a member of the society. And sometimes when I drive, I see road rage, I see people yell, I see some people just lose it. And some
Mhm.
people are just like, is there another planet we all can go to except for Earth? Can we go to Jupiter or Saturn?
Right?
It's, it's like
Yeah.
everybody wanted to elope from this chaos, but we didn't know where and how and when. So I think the last year, I just see that a lot of families have gone through a lot of things, whether
Yeah.
Mhm.
death or loss of a job. Everybody has dealt with something. So this year, I've really focused on healing, emotional intelligence. How do we cleanse our emotions to use it positively? Even though, and it's part of the reason why I stepped away from direct, patient care, because it get to a point that it was so much for me. Uh, Too much, people are dying, and you're like, did I do something right? Or your students is like, Lola, I can't come to class, I'm suicidal. I'm like, okay, I got to
Wow.
figure out where am I in all of this equation. So this year, my focus has been healing, healing as a family, healing as a whole, which means the healing has to start from you.
Mhm.
Right.
Emotional intelligence. So as I'm more, how do I say it? I'm more focus on that, more gentle on some people. So when I see people in that state, I'm more open to how can I help you? I'm more open to how can we make this feel better, which brings me to where I opened the medical, the Spa and the aesthetic clinic. How can I make this better? How can I empathize with you? How can I, bring these emotions to a positive place, even though it doesn't seem positive right now. So this year, my focus is family healing as a community, whatever family means to you. Some people is family, dad, mom, and kids. Some people is grandma, dad, and some people is themselves. Some people, that's all they've got. They've lost family, they've lost dad and mom, and their only child. And
Mhm.
it's COVID. So,
Wow.
so I've seen a lot. I have friends in the US. I've seen a variety. So I'm like, so focus on healing for me this year is what I am really centered on. And I'm telling the children to be sensitive, because you don't know what somebody else is going through, even at school. You don't know what's going on. So be more sensitive to anyone that comes across your visual field. Be gentle, be aware, be self-aware, and lead yourself in a gracious way, that you're not too hard on yourself, because you can't lead other people if you cannot lead yourself in a healthy way. So that's where my focus is this year, to put myself out there to whoever that comes across my way, to be able to see where we can heal and help each other. And if we are all healthy, then we become more healthier, right?
Yes. What I needed to kind of focus is on like physical health as well, right? So
Okay.
basically, what are the things that women need to do as in different phases of their life? That would be a question to you, Lola. Like, how do women at different phases of their life make sure that they keep their health at the top?
Very good question. Looking from a healthcare perspective, that's, we have years that are teenagers and, post teenagers, then now you're married, you are now pregnant, then you are now a breastfeeding mother, or postpartum. So whichever area of life that a woman is dealing with, it depends on the perspective, whether you're looking at it from the health perspective or personal perspective. Self-care is so key. Find time for you to discover who you are. Our society has made it so much for women, or even girls. They start from when we're girls, childhood, that the focus of responsibilities placed on us. We are the one that must know how to clean and know how to do this. Oh, because there's a silhouette, there's a scale that we are being looked at. So find ways to know who you are, because what is okay for me might not be what is okay for Mary. What energizes Mary might not be what's going to be okay for Janine, and things like that. So for women, or since you mentioned women, whichever stage you are in, find time to know who you are and what fills you. And don't be afraid to stand up on what fills your cup, because I've seen that there's so many yardstick that we are being judged, whether culture as a mother, you have to act certain way, whether as a girl, you have to do certain way, whether you're a wife, you have to act certain way, but nobody asks you, Mary, how are you doing?
Yeah, so true.
You know, there's this yardstick and evaluation of that everybody has, but nobody remembers that we are still in the middle of all this. So for women at all stages, remember to take time for yourself, to care for yourself. If you like to read like Janine, take time to read and make sure you feel fulfilled, you are happy. If you are pregnant or you're married, take time to care for your body, to relax, to go in the jacuzzi and find time to pamper yourself. If you're a mother, take time to tell the kids, go to your room, it's mommy's time. Watch Netflix, whatever fills you up. Come to the spa, let them massage you, get your hair done, dress pretty. If you're a priest too, want to go to church or go to temple, find time to do that. Whatever fills you up, please make sure you do it. And of course, check your blood pressure, your vital signs, see your doctor. If you are over 40, even I should just say even 35 and above, make sure you have a regular visit to your doctor. Check your blood work, your what you eat, your vital signs, your blood pressure, your lab work, cholesterol, what you eat. Be mindful of it. Be mindful and wear sunscreen. And that's another thing that I've discovered in my line, my line of duty. Wear sunscreen. There's some basic, drink lots of water, you know. And when you reach the age of menopause, take time to know what are, there are some things that are they are not worth fighting for. Don't stress yourself like you're a teenager, you are going party and all that. You have a heart attack. Like sometimes know where you are in the spectrum of life. And for the young ones too, don't make wrong choices. Even though you're young, it's not the time for you to start smoking. Like Janine said, the body keeps a record. It
Yeah.
keeps that because it might show up down the line. So that's what I would advise, as women, as girls, to know where we are in the stage of life and see what is healthy for us. If you're a mom or you're trying to get pregnant, that's not the time for you to start doing drugs or you start drinking wine if you're trying to get pregnant. Things like that. So I think depending on where you are and what you want to do, it's important that you figure out um, what is healthy for you, your doctor, your diet, mental, emotional, physical health. Make sure you take care of that and take time intentionally to care for it.
Thank you so much. That was so comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to Janine. I know that you are talking to a lot of people who are struggling through different things, and you're trying to help a lot of people. So, just talking about different stages of life, like youth, then seniors, parents. Different kinds of phases of your life.
Yeah.
Like, what are the kind of things that you see when you speak to different people in these kind of age groups?
Mm. That's such an interesting question because once you start like on this path of mental health and just kind of talking about it, you kind of forget that there's this world of people who don't know anything about it and who don't really tap into the resources. So, as I talk to more people and trying to normalize this conversation, um, I think the kids and the younger generation are definitely more receptive to it because it's become normal, right? Like they talk about it at school. My girls go to a school where they really enforce like your emotions and they talk about having a blue day versus, a green day, or And so they really provide safe spaces. I find there's more of a challenge with the older generation to talk about mental health. I remember growing up, I mean, my mom is from 7, my dad is from 7. So between 14 on either side, there was one uncle who we knew had mental health challenges. And it's like, no, he wasn't the only one. I know for sure he couldn't have been the only one, right? It's impossible. According to the statistics, like 1 in 4 people are going to go through some sort of mental health crisis in their lifetime. So there's no possible way that he was the only one. He was just the only one that was front and center, just the loudest voice, right? So that generation before us is just not ready to talk about. I think as life goes on and I guess this middle generation, like my generation, we talk about it more. They're understanding it more. I don't know if they'll ever get to a point where they accept it or they identify and be like, yeah, I actually went through stuff. And this is, kind of how I dealt with it. I think they're still really resistant. But at least they're open to the conversation. I remember when I started my podcast last year, my aunt was just like, why are you doing this? And she couldn't understand. Like, because mental health is this huge piece that we just don't talk about, right? That we just sweep under the rug and be like, no, it's fine. You're not really going through anything. Just, pull out your big girl panties and keep pushing through. Like, no, it doesn't exist. It's not right. So I find, as I said, the older generation, while we can talk about it,
Well,
not really
my mom used to say that if you have faith, then you don't have any mental health issues.
right. Oh,
I was like, no,
absolutely.
mom,
Yep.
it's not like that.
Right? And that's exactly it, right? Like that's what they were taught. I was actually just doing some research on like religion and the church. And I mean, I'm a person of faith, so I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I'm like, it has put this dark cloud over talking about mental health because it doesn't exist. If you can just pray it away, right? Go talk to God about it. And it's like, well, no, there's faith without works is dead. You have to be able to go hand in hand. Yes, you can pray, but at the same time, you have to actually go talk to your medical professional. Maybe you need to go on some medication. You need to go talk to your therapist. You need to do the work in the natural to be able to navigate those, the sea of life. Um, and yeah, with the younger generation, my daughter actually, when I was going through my divorce, she went to see a therapist, and I connected her to a child psychologist for that exact reason. Because I'm like, if I'm talking about it as an adult, I have to be that example for her, and I have to normalize it for her. So she was going to see a therapist to make sure that she was transitioning, and just adjusting to the new dynamic well. And I think that in itself is powerful because when she would go to school, she'd be talking and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving for my appointment with my therapist. No big deal." And the other kids, that couldn't happen with us. That was not normal
Very true.
No,
in our lifetime.
no.
So,
Even
yeah,
actually,
with
even for me, because I've been through some really difficult phase just around COVID, around the time of COVID, where I lost my job and I was very depressed. I was going through major
yep,
depression because I was used to having a lot of money and I was not used to having like no money. All of a sudden, like with COVID, I lost my
absolutely.
job, and
Yep,
so the financial stability was suddenly just taken away from me, right?
yep,
So that depression that I went into was so hard that I had to go to a therapist. Till I went to the
absolutely.
therapist, I really did not know what my problem was. And when I did the
Yeah.
therapy, like that's when I realized how important this is to be actually trained in school to children, that
Yes.
emotional health is a whole piece that you need to learn about. And
Right.
the educational institutions are not focusing on that.
No.
They're
Um,
not. They're
yeah, so
not.
that to
They're
me
not
is
at all.
something that needs to be in the curriculum, don't you think, ladies?
Yes.
Absolutely. It should be because that's the engine block of what makes us who we are.
Exactly. Yep.
If you, I don't care if it's a Rolls Royce or if it's a Ferrari. If the engine is messed up, that vehicle is going nowhere. So I don't understand why emotional health and mental health is not spread across all the curriculum that people can talk about freely and
Mhm.
confidently to be able to say, okay, like she was saying, oh, I'm in the orange. I think I'm yelling, or I think I don't even know how to explain where I'm at or how I'm feeling because it's a lot.
Mhm.
Imagine COVID knocked everybody out. I'm telling you, it
Yep.
got to a point. I didn't even know what to do as an instructor. Like I didn't even know how to what to tell the kids when they come back from school and everybody had to wear masks and I didn't have answers to everything. So, managing those emotions, emotional health and emotional intelligence, like Janine said, those things were never existent, even growing up. And unfortunately, in our generation that we are now mothers, that's why it's causing relationship problem, companionship problem, because some of
Mm-hmm.
us are learning the healthy way to speak our truth, which our mothers never did.
Mm.
Right?
And
Yeah, and there's so
um,
much that we have to unlearn, right? We have to like
right,
Mm.
unpack all of this stuff that brought us to this stage, which obviously set us up for success, and then like relearn a whole new way of dealing with things and just responding. And as I said, like intentionally parenting our children, right? When they've got big emotions, like I can only imagine how big it is and how overwhelming it is for a child to, go through COVID and be like, I need to see my friends. They have no really critical thinking, being like, I can't see my friends every day. Or,
right,
now I have to be home for 3 weeks, or now everything is shut down and I can't have birthday parties. Like, sure, baseline, they can understand that, but really to understand that at a deeper level, like that's huge for them. They're gonna have these big emotional outbursts, and you're like, I understand. We
Yeah.
have to give space for it, right? Allow them to feel it and be like, don't worry, we're gonna figure it out together. Mom's here, mom's not leaving you, mom's got you. We're in this together, right? Riding through the storm together. So
right.
yeah.
Thank you for that. Also, Janine, I would like to, broach this topic about immigrants. Um,
Mm,
Immigrants of every different race that we have here in Canada.
Yeah.
That is one intersectionality related to mental health. It affects us all in different ways, and especially Black people and Indigenous communities.
Yes.
So I just wanted to open that up for you to, give some idea on what kind of issues they're going through and what are the things that, Black people, Indigenous people need to take care of just for self care.
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents are from the Caribbean. I was born, raised here in Canada. And I don't think I really realized that there was this huge difference until 2020, right? Until George Floyd happened and everything, just as I said, like just it blew everything wide open. And and I think it's because my parents were very intentional with making sure that I had the same opportunities and around the same influences as all of my peers. So I never really saw myself as any different. But when the conversation started being talked about like, being Black, I had to do some self-reflection and be like, "Oh, okay, maybe I do see things differently." I started a new job with a new organization, Habitat for Humanity, and they were talking about building houses for different cultures, right? How when you build a house for, let's say, a white person for or a white family, the standard of exhaust and in the kitchen just to get the air out of the kitchen is not the same as an immigrant family, because with immigrant families we cook with lots of spices and lots of seasonings, so we need to have that exhaust system working to its fullest capacity. So we had like high efficiency systems and appliances. And I was just like, right, we do, because like that's just my normal to have all the smells in the house. So I think for immigrants, let's say Black people and Indigenous, we carry all of that with us when we go into a room. Um, we don't realize that it's like it almost feels like it's resting on our shoulders. Like if I'm the only Black person in a department or a branch of 75 people, then I feel like I'm setting the example for all the Black people that are gonna come after me, right? If I am misbehaving and, let's say, stealing time and all that kind of stuff, that is possibly gonna taint everybody else's perception about Black people. So that in
Yeah.
itself is a heavy burden to carry. It's like I have to be on my best behavior. I read this book last year called, Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, and it's from a Black woman's perspective, and she talks about how everything that we do and everywhere that we go, we have to be on our best behavior, because if we're not, we get pinned as like the angry Black woman, or, all
Mm,
Black people, because of this one example or this one interaction that they had. And I feel like
mm,
Indigenous people go through the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I know
yeah.
lots of Indigenous people who are well educated and who are doing amazing things with their life and don't fall into that stereotype. But because that one person had that one experience with that Indigenous person at, the gas station at 2 o'clock in the morning, they've painted that entire race with that same brush.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a heavy burden, and I think we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware that, hey, you know what? This is weighing heavily on on my mental health. I remember was talking to my therapist about exactly that, and I'm like, all these conversations are coming up, and it's a lot. But I feel like I can't not have the conversations because this is our opportunity to educate. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel very emotionally exhausted from all of these conversations. And she's like, then take the time, right? Like it's not like these conversations have to happen in 2020 or in 2021, right? These should be ongoing conversations, a continuous thing, a continuous education piece. So it's okay that you're feeling this. Take a step back and be like, you know what? I'm going to come back to this maybe in a month or two. I do want to come back to this because I feel it's necessary for us to continue this, conversation or this education piece. But right now I'm a little overwhelmed. So I'm just going to take a step back. I'm going to take a pause for a minute.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Janine. So I'm going to ask you one more question about, as a parent, what is the best way to raise your child? Is it better to tell them about all the, differentiation that people have towards immigrants, or is it better to just not make them aware about those differentiation and the discrepancies in, like your opportunities for different things are different, so you better work hard? Because my parents used to tell me that, like, if you're going to a new country, remember your opportunities are not equal, so you have to work really hard. And I think
Yeah.
those things prepared me, gave me a lot of motivation and courage, and like, to take on those challenges. And probably I wouldn't have been ready if they told me everything's going to be pretty equal. What do you think as a mental health practitioner?
That's hard. Because I definitely think that every situation and every parenting situation is different, right? Even though I've got 2 kids, I parent my 2 children very differently. Like, I've got one super sensitive child and another child who is like fire. So, so I think it's hard to have the same, parenting style, or the same, use the same parenting, words of advice with all of the children and with every family. That being said, I don't think it's helpful to shield them from everything. We've had lots of conversations. I mean, they're only 8 and 10, but we've had lots of conversations around racism. We've had lots of conversations around discrimination. So I think that it is important for them to be aware, but at the same time, not to burst their bubble, right? Like, let be a kid for a little bit, let them
Yeah.
enjoy, and not look at their friends and be like, oh, just because they're not, this particular race, they're going to judge me. Um, but let them be aware that, hey, you know what? At some times, you are going to be that only Black kid in the room, and you may have to work that extra little bit harder. Or maybe this was because, you're of your race, or this had to do with your gender even. Um, so maybe I think there's a balance. I think
Yes.
there's a balance between the two. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's totally where I stand too. Thank you for that. We really
Okay.
need to keep a balance so that children don't get scared of, getting into things or doing things, but also make sure that they have the idea that this could happen to them, so they're not shocked when it happens to them.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go to Lola. When we raise children as young parents, there is no book somewhere which tells us how to raise them. We never really know, and sometimes our parents have not raised us in the best possible way either. So we generally, like, do what our parents have done to us, right? Many times that might not be the best way to raise your kid. So my mom, she was very health conscious, and so she made sure that I ate balanced food. Like, my diet was very balanced, and she made sure that we were into sports. So I'm a very active person, and I totally owe it to my mom that I continue to stay active. And she is 80 years old, and she still plays badminton. So I'm so proud of my mom. She is healthy at 80. So. Um, But when it comes to mental health, my mom really didn't have any idea. She really didn't know about emotional maturity, how to deal with different kinds of things. And so it was a long road for me to get some idea about my own emotional stability and how to, help my children to learn about it and how to get them through that process of, recognizing who they are and where they are at different points of time and how to work with those things, your emotions, right? So, like, I just want to ask you, like, as a parent, how do you raise your children to be healthy so that the future generation is not just physically healthy, but also mentally healthy, emotionally healthy?
Well, thank you for that question. Like, it's a difficult question to answer because it's never a one size fits all. Um, like I said, or like Janine said, I have 3 kids and they're all different. One is super sensitive, one is like loud. What you see is what you get. One is, if I don't have peace, nobody has peace. So, you know, and to be honest with you, like you mentioned, our parents have a different perspective of how they raised us. And some of us didn't even have the opportunity to grow up with our parents. So we've had what went so well that we knew I'm going to change this for sure when I'm in position of power. Like I knew some things I'm like, no, I'm not going to raise my children this way because I have experienced it. Or some
Mm,
things I know that
yeah.
for sure, so sometimes it's good to check the why. Why are we making certain decisions? What is our core value? What makes me Lola? What makes Janine? Why is something a deal breaker for me? So sometimes I check myself, then I figure out the ways to tell this one that is so sensitive and say, okay, this is the reason why I'm telling you don't do this, because that's my perspective, and I've seen this, and this happen. And so when you get to that place and you see contrary or you think, let me know. So sometimes I keep it open. That's the way I've tried to raise them. And being honest, and I know it's a difficult thing. Most of our parents will tell you they're always first in their classes, into their unit. They're always the first person. But now when we grew up, we are like, there's no way you will have a GP of 6.0 because you can only have a 4. Some of them are makeup stories to really propel us to be serious. We know that some of them
Mm,
are just, you know, subtle way of keeping us on track and making sure you're serious, or checkmating us or balancing what we do. And now we are thinking, oh, Daddy, you didn't really mean when you said that word, because it wasn't true. So raising my kids, I've I've tried to be authentic with them, to let them know it's never one size fits all. So the way I'm gonna talk to them uh, is based on the fact that I have a rationale why I'm saying this. And sometimes I don't have a clue because I just think it's just the right thing to do. So I never, never, never stop yourself from growing. I always tell them life is growth. Anywhere you reach in life and you think I've achieved, I can't grow anymore, that's a dangerous place to be.
Mhm.
So as you are growing as a child, mommy is growing too. We are learning the ability to know that I can learn, you can learn. That's the authentic self. Being your authentic self is where I raise my children on. So they can come to you and say, you know what, mom, I did that, but on eyesight, I think maybe I shouldn't have done that. That was a stupid thing I did. So maybe next time, that's a learning curve for me. And sometimes I do the same thing too. I share it with them and let them know I'm still human. There are some times I'm vulnerable. I'll tell them I had a bad day. So please, can I have like 15 minutes to suck on my tongue? Or, and they laugh and I just say, maybe today I have to like give me a pacifier, an adult pacifier, but it's a figure of speech, because I had a bad day. So sometimes it gives them a sense of reality that,
so
mom,
true. Yeah.
mom is still human. So sometimes you have a good day, you have a bad day. So that's how I've raised my kid. I'm not sure, my children, I mean. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we're still learning. It's still I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I hope I'm doing a good job where they can come to me and say, oh, this is what happened in school today. Maybe I should have done that better, or maybe that was the right thing to do. This is a deal breaker for me, mom. Things like that. And just have that conversation where we're authentic to share how we feel, because that's the best way you can get the best out of anyone, when they
Totally.
are their authentic self.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. And I believe that, what you've done best for your children is to create an environment where there's no judgment. So
That's
there
right.
is honesty. And that is the most important thing in a family. Like, if you don't know that your child has got into drugs, you cannot save them, right?
No.
So there are situations where, like in my family, when I was growing up, if somebody offered me something like that, I would never tell my mom because she would kill me.
Wow.
So
Yep.
um
Yeah.
so the thing is that now there is much more honesty with our own children, right? we
Right.
Yeah.
we are able to open up much more, and they are more understanding. And I think in Canada, in schools, there is a lot of training about emotional, a little bit more. So,
Right.
and also the independence is much more in Canadian society. So children, when they are in school, they know that they're a separate person. They're not like attached to their mom the whole time, right? And when we were
Right.
growing up, it was like my mom's reputation is based on my behavior.
Yes. That was a
So
big thing, right? Like you were told that when you're out there, you represent me. Everything you do looks bad, looks, reflects on me. You're like, it's a lot of pressure for a child.
exactly. So now
It's
our
true.
children are free from all those shackles, and they feel that they are their own individual people. And I also do try to give them that freedom to be, just voice their opinions. We don't shut them down. And I think that's the best way to raise our kids, to be able to voice their own opinion, find their own individuality. We've spoken so much about mental health today, and I really, really, really enjoyed this conversation. But before we close, I just want you, as both as health practitioners, to give some advice to our audience about what do you think, can be done as we raise our children a little better, or as a human being, as a citizen of Edmonton. What are the kinds of things we can do as immigrants and as women in health practice?
Hmm. I'll let Janine go first. Or do you want me to go first?
It
You
doesn't
can go
matter.
first.
Either of you can start, and we don't have too much time, so
Okay,
you can
pretty
wrap
quickly.
it up as quickly as you can.
Okay. Two things I know it's important to any human being: your health and your wealth. You know, I try to, if you want somebody to be mad at you, mess with their health. Or, don't even let me say that. If you want somebody to lose their sense of self, if they lose their health and they lose their money, it's like a deal breaker, for
Yeah.
them. So I tend to, tell myself and tell my children, know who you are. Make sure you watch your health. And your health is not just what I eat: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, all those things. Make sure you check it monthly, daily, weekly, whichever, and make sure you have a routine of what do you want to be, what's your goal in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. So do you want a lifestyle where you can self-sustain yourself, which means you have to make some money to do that? As long as we're still spending currency, do you have ways of creating wealth for yourself? Do you want to be a doctor? What are your goals towards that? So in terms of health and wealth, I try to ask myself, where are you 5 years ago? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? So I implant that in them in terms of emotional intelligence, because some of these things, they are intertwined. It's never a one size fits all. And at the same time, they are very, very, very important. None of them exists in self-isolate, in a way. So if you have money, like all these are important. So your wealth, your health, make sure you check them. Make sure you have goals for them, and you have active steps of being authentic, your authentic self, where you can tell yourself the truth, whether Janine is there or not. You can say, oh my God, I think I'm spending too much. Oh my God, I think I'm making progress. Oh my God, I'm thinking if I keep going this way, I'm going to be bankrupt. Or am I losing my mind? And don't be afraid to ask for help if you don't know.
Thank you. Quickly, I'm going to
That's so
go to Janine so we can wrap this up because I think we are overdue over our time.
okay. I'll be quick.
Correct.
Um, I think the biggest thing I want people to take away is that they are uniquely made, right? You are an individual, and that exactly how you were designed and created, you have a purpose, you are accepted, you are loved. To find your tribe of people. I mean, like just in this little group here, we found like connections, right? You can find people to connect with, and that you matter. At the end of the day, everything that you do and everything about you matters. So value, as Lola says, your wealth, value your health, value your mental health, value, taking time for yourself, because it is there is a purpose to it. And I do believe that it will be used for a greater purpose. So yeah, that's what I want
Thank
to
you
take
so
away.
much to both of you. And, two of our actually panelists were missing today, but I think we had a really wholesome conversation. Thank you so much. And for all the wonderful things you shared with me today. See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for having us. Bye
Bye.
bye.